Today on the CTV News at 5, back behind bars. Days after being released, what landed a high-risk offender back in police custody. Plus, why officials from Alberta Health Services are apologizing to staff and residents at a care facility in Carmangay. And a medicinal marijuana user has his day in court, why he says it's time laws change.
You're watching CTV News.
Good afternoon. A woman identified as a high-risk offender who'd recently been released back into the community is now once again in custody. 35-year-old Melanie Rose Lierendell has been charged with theft and breach of a peace bond. The charges stem from an incident Monday afternoon at a downtown restaurant. Police were called to investigate after a woman stole a wallet off a table. Lierendell was released from the Edmonton Women's Institute August 7th after serving a 2-year sentence for aggravated assault, drug possession, and breaching court orders. Police have apprehended the man responsible for a robbery in North Lethbridge last night. A man entered Pop's Pub just before 11 p.m. and handed a note to an employee saying the business was being robbed. The bartender handed over some cash, then locked the doors and called police. No weapon was displayed, but police say firearms were referenced. The note also indicated there were other people waiting outside the store, and if the employee didn't comply, it'd get ugly. 35-year-old Terrence Tailfeathers is charged with 1 count of robbery. The man charged with kidnapping a 3-year-old boy in Sparwood had several other charges officially withdrawn today. Randall Peter Hopley was facing a series of break-in charges stemming from 2 years ago in the Crow's Nest Pass and Pincher Creek areas. Those charges were waived to BC courts some time ago, and Hopley has already pleaded guilty. An order was also granted to return the property seized during the investigation to its rightful owners. Hopley is currently in custody, awaiting a possible hearing as a dangerous offender. Alberta Health Services has apologized for the way it handled the closure of Little Bow's Continuing Care Centre. The facility in Carmangay is being shut down after residents are being transferred to other locations in southern Alberta. This afternoon, health officials met with families and healthcare centre staff, but as Terry Vogt reports, for many of those affected, the apology comes much too late.
The meeting was held behind closed doors at the Little Bow Continuing Care Centre. But for some of the staff and families of the 18 residents who are being relocated, an apology is too little, too late.
How do you apologize to me and my family for knowingly continuing to put my grandma's life in jeopardy to meet a political mandate and some, moving some numbers around in a balance sheet to make yourself look good? There isn't an apology you can give. You're still endangering her life, and nobody's taking responsibility for that, from Alison Redford to Fred Horn to anyone in Alberta Health Services. So, big empty words.
Registered nurses working here have already received layoff notices. Other staff were scheduled to get theirs Monday, but are still waiting.
It's horrible for these workers. Some of these people just walk across the street to work, and it's going to uproot the whole community. And even if it's only 40 staff, that's 40 staff, That's important.
The meeting comes only a week after Alberta Health Minister Fred Horn made an unexpected and unannounced visit to the care centre. At the time, Horn said he wanted to make sure that people were being treated well, with respect and dignity. But some community residents arrived to find this meeting was closed to the public, with only family, staff, and volunteers allowed inside.
We still haven't formally received anything as the village that this is happening from AHS. And part of the rollout was that the mayor would be notified. And other than being a staff member myself, that's the only way the community knows.
They're not doing a public apology to anybody. They brought security in here. We haven't had security in Carmangay since I don't even know if there ever has been security. I'm sure the AHS security guard had to get a map to figure out where the facility was.
Alberta Health Services declined to do an interview prior to the meeting. A spokesman says the purpose was to open a dialogue with the families and answer their questions. The decision to close the facility remains. Staff say 2 of the last 11 residents are scheduled to be relocated before the end of the week. Terry Vogt, CTV News, Carmangay.
Thank you, Terry, for that. Following today's meeting, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Alberta Health Services did conduct a telephone interview with us. He says the meeting was called to apologize for the engagement process and the miscommunication and the anxiety and stress that it's caused. Chris Mazurkiewicz says the residents have strong emotions and raised some good points. He also says Alberta Health Services is moving forward with the transition of residents to other facilities, although the exact timing has yet to be worked out. And now the star of our show, Ms. Dory Rossiter, with our first look at what? Dory, temperatures into the 30s this week.
Oh boy, no one calls me a star ever, so thank you so very much for that, Daryl. Yeah, we are looking at temperatures moving back up into the 30s as we head into the weekend and the beginning of Whoop Up Week. Of course, everyone wants nice weather, and that looks like what we're going to get. I'll have the 5-day forecast and all the weather details coming up in a few minutes.
Thank you, Dory. A medicinal marijuana user and civil rights activist was in Taber Court yesterday to face drug possession charges dating back to 2008. Neil Magnuson was originally charged 4 years ago while on a cross-country tour promoting the decriminalization of marijuana. He was arrested in Edmonton last week on an outstanding warrant. Magnuson says he thought the charges had been dropped. He has since obtained a permit allowing him to use marijuana to relieve chronic pain from advanced degenerative arthritis. Magnuson has posted $400 bail and will return to court in Taber in September. He says it's an example of why the laws need to be changed.
There was no intent on my part to miss dates. No reason for taxpayers to have to spend any money on coming after me for that. I'm not going to learn a lesson from it. I don't know what the lesson would be. I had a lawyer look into it. Frustrated about the fact today that the judge would not listen to anything that I had to say with regards to submissions, and I had it in writing for him, just very briefly, 1 page of why this should not continue. There is no reason for the public to spend money pursuing this case against me here.
Magnuson also had his vehicle seized when he was arrested. He says supporters of his Freedom Tour have replaced his bail money and the cost of having his vehicle removed from storage. Local harvesters helped raise over $600,000 to help those less fortunate. Dozens of farmer and ag service workers donated their machinery, fuel, and other costs to bring in the harvest for the Canadian Food Grains Bank. This is the Lethbridge Coaldale Community Growing Project, which was located on a farmland along Highway 3 east of Lethbridge. The barley averaged 114 bushels per acre, combined with straw sales from the crop. Total proceeds from this year's harvest was over $119,000. That money will be matched by a government grant at a 4-to-1 ratio. There's yet another road closure to tell you about in Lethbridge. This time, starting today, an outside southbound lane on Scenic Drive from 15th Street South to the Sugar Bowl underpass will be closed. Parts of the Coalbanks Trail pathway will also be shut off to pedestrian traffic. The closure is necessary to allow construction equipment access to complete repairs to the pathway. The closure is expected to last until August 29th. Most of the park lighting along the pathways at Henderson Lake Park are temporarily out. The city says a broken underground power line has shut off electricity in the area. The washroom lights at Henderson are also affected. Portable washrooms will be placed at the Shoreline Pavilion and North Parkside Drive tomorrow morning. The city hopes to have the line repaired this weekend. 2 people are dead, 8 others injured after a violent rush hour crash in Montreal. Investigators are still working to reconstruct the accident. The impact between the bus and 2 cars was so great that the bus flipped on its side and the engine of 1 car ended up in the vehicle's passenger compartment. The driver of the bus was pinned underneath his vehicle. A female driver of one of the cars was tossed through a window. Both were killed. Labour talks have shifted into high gear between the Canadian Auto Workers Union and the Big 3 car makers.
Just give us everything we asked for, brother.
The union talks began yesterday with General Motors and Chrysler. Today they'll sit down with Ford. The CAW wants to get a share of profits made by the automakers, which have rebounded from their financial struggles from several years ago. At the time, workers agreed to concessions such as freezing wages. London is getting ready to host the world once again, this time for the Paralympics. And once again, Canadian athletes are ready to participate.
Go Canada!
The Canadian Paralympic team was given a send-off today at Pearson Airport in Toronto. Some 145 athletes will suit up in 15 sports, among them Lethbridge swimmer Zach McAllister. In Beijing 4 years ago, Canada finished 7th with 50 medals, including 19 gold medals. And now as we go to break, let's take a look at today's closing numbers.